So hopefully the first 2 sessions, and my goal is the last part of today, you actually practice and have somebody practice teaching you these first 2 sessions. Again, you won't be able to spend all the time, but really looking at the activities and how these work, okay? Part 3 then, remember the dash part. Now we've done the D and the A already. We've taught them how to ask. Now we're teaching them how to see, okay? How to observe using the ABC recording form. The idea that they are using their facts interview, that summary statement they got from the facts interview, to inform their observation, and they put that in the gray part of their ABC observation form, and then go off to those routines that are identified. Again, that's a key point. A lot of times people just go when they're free, and they go and observe during the PE class or the math class, and they say, well, there's no problem behaviors. Well, yeah, in the interview, actually it wasn't identified as a problem routine. So unfortunately, you need to make yourself available to go and observe during that routine where the problem behavior occurs. And so really encouraging them to use that facts to guide where they observe and of course how they observe. So, and we're going to cover, looking at the manual, page 40 through 66. There's going to be some videos for this session. And again, these are available from Terry Scott and friends. So we're going to use that facts form and use the information from that routine to determine the where and when to observe. Then we're going to plug in those antecedent behavior and consequences from that facts form into the top of our ABC sheet. And we're going to teach them, and there's actually a practice activity, activity 1, on page 42, guides them along in that they have a actually completed one of Tracy. And so they're going to take that facts summary statement and plug it in to the top on page 44. And they're going to practice that for about 60 to 90 seconds. And then they're going to get ready to observe using the video. Okay? So what we do is, one, we do a little guidance here, and we have them look at Eddie, and no pressure to really record at this point, but they could follow along. But on page 50 to 52, we have a completed one of Eddie, based on the video, what happened in the video. And so they can follow along as they watch the video. And so I'm going to play Eddie right now. And hopefully the sound and light, everything works here.
Excuse me. I excuse you right in the mouth, George.
All right, sorry I'm late. Let's get started by passing in the homework.
What homework?
The homework that's due every Monday.
Since when?
Since the beginning of school, we've had homework that's due every Monday morning.
Not since I've been here. Call me a liar?
I'm not calling you a liar, I'm just telling you.
You never told me. How am I supposed to do homework if you never tell me?
Sit down. I want you to get out your books, pair up, and make sure that you can answer all of the questions on pages 148 and 149.
I'm working with you. What's your problem, punk?
Sit.
You think you can make me do this work? What are you looking at?
Okay, so that's Eddie, and the practice. And basically just observe what it could look like for Eddie. Now this is my interpretation, and of course I had a lot more time. You're not going to be able to pick up on all these things in an observation, and we walk through looking at what happens step by step. So after teaching them how to fill in the behavior part first on page 49, sorry I said 50, page 49, and then looking at what happens before and after, and completing all of that, then of course filling out the tallies if they like to do that. But the main idea is coming up with the bottom gray part of a summary statement, and that's where they identify the during, the when, the student will, and because, and then they rate. How convinced are they, based on this observation, that they would be able to come up with some supports for that guy? Does that make sense of how the ABC recording form works? Now the session obviously does step by step, and we practice every step of the way. I'm kind of giving you, of course, the fast version to getting there. So, let's see here, sorry. All right, and so we walk through the example, and we talk about, well, what was the first problem behavior? Well, what were we looking at first? Well, we said that from the facts, it says that he's arguing with the teacher and teaches other students when he's given directions and he's asked to turn in assignments, doing large group and small group instruction. And from the facts, they believe that it was adult attention, and because the teacher responds and the peers avoid. And so we walk through each of these parts and kind of talk about those pieces, and then talk about the final summary statement. So during large group instruction, when given instruction or correction from the teacher, he actually talks and yells out, and the teacher actually responds to him. Therefore, I believe that he's trying to access adult attention from the teacher. How confident do I feel about that? About a 5, so maybe I won't have to observe again. Now, if I didn't feel so confidently, again, it's you're the judge there. If you mark a 3, then of course make sure you go and observe during that teacher's time. Question?
Is that because he did it before he was asked to perform a task?
What was that, sorry?
He acted out against or loudly with the teacher before the teacher actually asked him to do a task. Was that why you determined it was teacher adult attention?
Yeah, mainly because every single outburst from the student, the teacher responded pretty quickly. And so that was, again, this is a 2-minute snapshot, right? We'd probably have to go and get a little bit more convinced and not based on this. But because we only have an hour to train this, we're going to kind of go with that. But yeah, it could be a number of things. But if we're not convinced, we definitely need to go back and see it again. And so we teach the idea we need to see that problem behavior at least 5 times. So if we're sitting down and in 20 minutes we see it happen about 5 to 10 times and we feel pretty convinced, good. If we sit there for 20 minutes we only see it once, it's kind of like, shucks, we need to make sure we see it 5 times. And that's kind of the unwritten rule that we guide along there. So what I want you guys to do is practice this one, okay? So, of course, the first activity was they took the facts and they plugged it in to Tracy. Sorry, this says, it's actually page 44 and 45 for you all. Okay, and they've already completed that first gray part, okay, but you can see very quickly that the antecedents are she's with peers that are not, there's actually popular and non-popular peers. You see on page 43 where I'm getting this from, the bottom of the facts, okay, that the problem behaviors then are that she calls people names, she threatens the weaker non-popular peers is what they said. And the consequence is that peers laugh at her in order to gain attention from the popular peers. And so we would plug that into the top of page 44, and that's what they practice doing, okay? And then, now that they've done that, we get ready to watch the video, and they're gonna complete it on their own. And so now I want you to kind of play the role of them, of the participants right now, and try to follow along with Tracy. I'll play it a couple times. I know it's very fast. In real life, you'd have more time. Whoops, sorry here. There we go.
Hey Jimmy, I'll trade you some of my chips for having that free lunch. Hey, what is up? Hey guys, whenever we eat out lunch.
Who said you could eat at my table, cow? take drafts. Don't you know it's rude to read at the table? Hello? Excuse me? Oh man, I'm being punished for cruelty to animals.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you got a chance to write all those down, but you can follow along. You have one more time, so you guys can practice it. And the way that we teach it, and sorry, I kind of jumped through that part, is we teach that we just write down in the beginning. We write down kind of like what I wrote for Eddie, right? I'll punch you right in the mouth, you dork, or whatever, right? And so we just write it, the words, and of course shorthand or whatever works for you, okay, so you remember it. And then don't even worry about the tallying until after you're done with your observation. And then we tally it up and we see what's the numbers there and come up with a hypothesis. Make sense? So why don't we practice, now that you've seen Tracy, let's practice looking at those behavioral occurrences again and looking at what happens before and after. Okay?
Hey, Judy, I'll trade you some of my tips for having that sandwich. Hey, Lily, what's up? Hey, guys, whatever be, I got money. Who said you could eat at my table, pal? I thought cows ate grass. Don't you know it's rude to read at the table? Hello? Excuse me? Oh man, I'm being punished for cruelty to animals.
All right, so you see there, if you can walk through looking at what they observed, and we can talk about a number of things there, but also there's like a completed version on 52 and 53 of kind of like how I see it. So if you can kind of gauge your observations versus these to see if we're on the same page and kind of talk through that. And again, coming up with the final hypothesis statement of sitting at the lunch table on page 53 at the bottom. When unpopular girl joins the table, the student will tease peers and throw food at peers because others laugh. And we believe the function is to access peer attention. And of course, we'd be specific of popular peers or whatever it may be. And then on a scale of 1 to 6, rating that. Okay? And so they practice doing those pieces. Okay, any questions overall about the ABC recording form? Or how that works out? No?
I have a question.
Yes?
It seems like here you start, it's more starting with the unpopular girl joining the table, where, unless I'm missing it, starting with, she was ignored.
Great point.
For about a minute, probably prior to that.
Yep.
So would you document each?
Totally. Yeah, and I think right here I have a little asterisk there. I can't read upside down too well. But try to talk to peers by showing them her food, etc., or whatever it is. So that's a great thing to note, right? She tried the right things, in a sense. She's like, hey guys, you know, look at me. But the popular peers did not care about that until she started teasing people. And so that's a good note, because if you're coming with a behavior support plan, you might want to work on a number of those things, right? And of course, right now we're just observing. But yeah, good observation. So yeah, you would put that in your notes. And again, you can use the Word document and expand these boxes if you need to. I know I don't give you much room to write, but the idea is that you'll get down your notes in your own way, okay? We definitely want them to rate. I want to think about how likely the summary is accurately portraying it. Some quick FAQs, yes?
I mean, you're asking people to write this down based on the specific behavior
But I mean, even you played it twice and I couldn't write that down that quick. So in real life, it's on a video and we're not going to be able to replay it.
Exactly.
So I would think you would just be putting, just being rude to a peer. I mean, you can't, you know what I mean, or verbally abusive to a peer as opposed to you're looking for exact language, but that's not realistic. You can't write all that down and observe it.
Yeah, exactly. So in your shorthand, kind of doing those pieces, but you'll be trained well enough from the first 2 sessions to specifically define those things and be specific. So yeah, I'm not going to be able to write a narrative version of all those things, but you'll be able to, one, when you go through your checkbox, think about that. Was it with peers, being more specific about what's going on there? And so yeah, in live time, you're not going to be able to write a lot of that detail, but teaching them to look for those things, and hopefully it'll be reflected that way, okay? And every person kind of does it their own way. That's why we teach the narrative way and then go to the check boxes. There's actually way more complicated forms, but we found this one to kind of be the most user-friendly for people who aren't trained in observation to do. So, yes?
It just seems to me that it's more likely that this is going to come to us after the fact and that we're not really going to be there to observe what even happened. So it seems to me that whoever just pulled her out, then we'll probably get her after that.
Right.
And then we'll get the story, but we won't necessarily have observed.
Yep, exactly. And so that's usually where we come in anyway, right? And so that's where we're going to want to try to be a fly on the wall and try to figure out how we can get this video clip, but in live time, right? So, and that might be hard to do as well. But again, these are, for the training's sake, we're just kind of training the technology of how to do the ABCs. And of course, we do talk about some of the strategies for observing and how to be a good fly on the wall, but everybody's going to do that their own way. But how many times should I observe the student? We say about 5 to 10 occurrences of the behavior. You should be convinced with a 3-to-1 ratio based on your facts. So from that interview, if what you've observed actually jives 3 times to 1 of what doesn't jive, then you should be pretty convinced that fact summary was pretty good. Okay? You may go in more than 1 day, but make sure that you're going during that identified routine is a common mistake people make. The main message is you need to be convinced. And so speaking towards your comment, the idea, we're not going to sit there and count, or people shouldn't have to sit there and count your number of occurrences or how detailed they were, but hopefully you're trained well enough that you'll be able to be convinced about your summary statement. And so you'll be able to write a good one. And that people will be able to write a good one by the end of this, okay? So you need to be convinced about the pattern of the student behavior. Again, if you've observed at least 5 instances, you should be good. Once you're convinced that your observations represent the behavioral pattern, then you can summarize the data. And so what we do then is kind of give a little graphic organizer if people need it to really organize their information. And so what we do is, Shane is another case study that we walk through, and there's a video for him as well. And we come up with, we plug in the teacher-staff interview here. We plug in what we thought for the ABC observation, our summary statement there, and then we have to give our final answer. So based on these things, what are we going to write as our final summary statement? So more of a graphic organizer to teach participants to come up with a final answer based on these data. Okay? And so, of course, common questions are, well, what if, the data do not match the facts? Well, you might need to do another ABC observation or interview another staff or another student. Okay? And so we review the key points for that. Any questions overall about part 3? No? Okay. Then we're going to jump right into part 4. Okay, and this is the fun part. So now we're teaching the participants to bring all that information together to then come up with function-based interventions. And we do that by using a couple of scenarios, Morgan and Jordan, and we have them walk through that. So if you guys look at, let's see, sorry. I'm trying to find Morgan and Jordan, so if somebody finds it before me. If you go to part 4. 77?
70.
Oh, here we go. 73 is Morgan. And on the back of Morgan is Jordan, 74. And those are the guys, those are our case studies that guide what we're going to do in this 4th session. So we're going to complete these by looking at the choices and why we choose the choices we choose. Okay? So we do a quick review in the 4th session to remind them what they've just gone through and the idea that we're working for students with mild to moderate problem behavior. We do a quick review of what are the steps in the FBA, and you guys know this, right? Dash, define, ask, see, hypothesize. Then we say, and we kind of walk through a case study, and this is Morgan at this point, of a teacher comes up to you and says, I have this disruptive student in my class. Okay? How are you going to ask her to better define disruptive for you? Okay? And what do you guys think based on what we quickly went over? How would you ask her to better define it? Give examples. Good.
Give me a sentence of numbers.
What was that? Sorry, I'll get to you. One more time.
And non-example.
And non-examples. Good. Give you a...
Sentence of numbers.
Okay, how observable and measurable, we can count that. And remember my overlying rule of if I can observe it so clearly, or you can define it so clearly that anybody coming into your room can see it, right? And so good. So you're going to ask that teacher that question, right? So perfect. Examples and non-examples, are they defined so clearly? Okay, so that same teacher has now referred that student for a practical, basic, or whatever you're calling it in your building, FBA. What would you tell her this is going to entail based on what I talked about the process? What is she in for? What do you guys think? Well, there's Dash, so what is she going to be involved with? What's going to happen? What's the first thing she's going to have to do? Come on, Bueller. Collect data. So what's the first step? We're going to actually ask her, right? So we have to spend 30 to 45 minutes together to get to know each other and the student. And we're going to ask her using the facts form, right? And then after we do that, what are we going to do? We're going to observe. So based on what you tell me in your interview, I'm now going to come into your class. Are you okay with that? You know, and talk with her about that process. Make sense? Well, she's like, I don't have that much time. How long should I schedule this interview for? Based on what we talked about, I know I went over it quickly. It was 30 to 45 minutes, okay? And kind of walking the participants through what's the purpose of this interview, why are we doing this, what are the steps, and how long. The idea here, and we teach in the practical FBA, is we really want participants to identify one function. I know it may not always be that simple, but that's why we're prioritizing, and we want to make sure that they're identifying one function, okay? So they're kind of putting their money into that one. Now the teacher's kind of like, well, you've interviewed me, why do you need to observe me? Okay, and what would you tell her? What do you think?
Gather data to see that it's true what's being said.
Yeah, to verify what you said, right? Because sometimes you're teaching at your back to the board, you can't see what's going on, right? We want to make sure we're verifying your summary statement. And of course, Sheldon Loman, that guy from Portland State, did some research and says asking is good, but seeing is even better. And people get it right more times than not if they see, right? She'll probably be bored by that part. But okay, so yeah, you're going to talk with her and tell her what the ABC is going to look like. You're going to confirm the accuracy of the summary statement, identify the antecedents and outcomes. You're going to verify the function, and of course, tell her, I really want to come up with the most accurate summary statement because we're going to come up with interventions based on that. So I really need to see, and I want to make sure that what we're saying is accurate. Okay? Well, what are you going to do with this information now that you've done it? She asks. Okay, what are you going to tell her? Create a behavior support plan, right? So, great, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. After we're done with this, we're going to get together as a team. So I'm not going to give you the plan. We're going to work on it together, and we're going to come up with interventions for the student based on the function. And so our outcome, we're going to have a summary like this, Mrs. Jones, and I'm going to show you what I did for the interview and the observation, and I'm going to give you my summary statement, and then we're going to go from there, and we're going to come up with a plan. And so, of course, the last session here, we make sure we solidify what these terms mean, kind of a final review. What are the functions of behavior, which you guys are experts at? And then we jump into Morgan. who we're going to use as our first example. Okay, and so before we put her in boxes, we actually do the narrative of Morgan. She's a 6th grade student who was referred by her teacher for being disruptive, refusing to do work, throwing books, papers on the floor, and saying this is lame. This problem occurs most frequently when Morgan is asked to write paragraphs to answer writing prompts in social studies. Morgan can verbally answer most questions successfully in large group discussions. However, she struggles with spelling and sentence construction. After she engages in disruptive behavior, the teacher ignores Morgan and lets her get out of the writing task, as she has sent her to the office in the past. Her behaviors are most likely to occur when she has recently received negative or corrective feedback about the writing tasks. Okay? So we take this long narrative and then we say, what are we going to do? What are the antecedents that we're going to be looking for Morgan? Do you guys remember what they were? To writing tasks, right? Or difficult task. Good. Okay. Of course, I broke my own rule here because I'd say, what is the problem behavior first, right? And it was refusing to do work, throwing papers on the floor, right? Then we look for what are those antecedents? What are the outcomes we're going to be observing for? Okay. So we see that the teacher ignores her or has sometimes sent her to the office. Okay. What is the setting event? And we didn't go over that too well in my time with you today, but we do in our trainings. And this problem occurs most frequently when Morgan is asked, oh, sorry, where are we? When she has recently received negative or corrective feedback about her writing task. That's our setting event. So that's an outside event that actually can inform what's going on. So if she's previously gotten feedback about her writing tasks, she's more likely then to have a problem behavior. And it's more clear when we go through the trainings here. But we then look at a summary, and of course we start with the behavior. Refuses to do work during social studies, when she's asked to write paragraphs, and the outcome is the teacher does not ask her to write anymore or sends her to the office, and they believe that the function is to avoid the difficult task. And so that's the summary statement that they're going to now use to guide their intervention plan. Make sense there? Okay. Then of course we talk about when is an FBA completed. The idea that we have to do our observation or our interview observation and come up with a summary statement, and we need to be convinced. Okay? So we then shift to looking at how does this inform our function-based interventions. So we start with that summary of behavior and make sure it's detailed enough. The idea, we teach participants to understand that they're not going to come up with this on their own, that they're working together with a team, but they definitely are going to understand the critical features better than most people. But we should have a lot of other people involved, like teacher, parent, other staff, behavior specialists to help us out if we need the help. And then there are 5 steps to this process of we're going to develop our competing behavior pathway, our behavior support plan, the implementation plan. Of course, you have to have a plan to evaluate that and have follow-up meetings to review the progress. So we're going to cover the first 2 in more detail than any of the other steps, because we want to make sure they understand what interventions they need to put into place. So the first step that we really do and teach is to make sure you look at that summary of behavior, paying special attention to the function of the problem behavior. Because from that function, we're then going to look at, do our antecedent strategies address that function? Does the way that we teach, and are we teaching ways to get that function differently? And of course, the way that we respond based on the function and allowing the student to get that, what their outcome. So this is Morgan's summary statement. So you see an example, number 1 on page 73. This is a blown up version of it, just the summary statement. Okay? And so you see here, we've then made it into a summary statement that she's more likely to refuse to do work if she's had feedback. The trigger is task is too difficult, and we've kind of defined that there. we also added a note that she actually can verbally answer the questions. It's just really the writing task that stumps her, okay? The problem behavior is that she refuses, doodles, throws books on the paper, or put books on the ground, and she's trying to escape the difficult task, okay? And so the idea, and we teach this process, that the function is where the student behavior intersects with the environment, the idea that they're actually learning from this, and so the idea is that they actually have in their repertoire already, that when I do this, or when this happens, if I do this, then I'm gonna get out of this activity, for example, for Morgan, okay? And so the idea, we think of the function is how that student benefits because they keep on doing that behavior. And we wanna break that chain, we wanna break that cycle. So we use that completed FBA again to inform our behavior support plan. So here's where RACER comes into play. Okay, and we teach the idea that we're going to focus on replacing the problem behavior first. We're going to come up with strategies to prevent the problem behavior, ways to correct, extinguish, and of course reinforce expected behavior. So we start with the replacement. So of course, this is what we want, right? In real life, we want the student to do what everybody else is doing. We want that desired behavior of just completing this stinking writing task and get your work done, and then you'll get another writing task. Thank you very much, right? So we want that to pay off for her. But unfortunately, that's not working, okay? So we don't start with then that desired behavior. We do need to teach her those writing skills, and we're going to do that, definitely. But in the meantime, we're not going to do very much if she continues to throw books on the floor and calls us lame and other things, right? So we really need to come up with a replacement behavior that matches the function, because we can't go straight to the desired behavior. So the idea that replacement behavior then, makes this problem behavior inefficient and ineffective. So this is an example, not Morgan, but a setting event of homework not being done. The trigger is given double-digit addition. Okay, now we really want him to complete his math and get another problem. But right now he's tantruming and he gets sent to the back table to escape the task. We're going to then teach him to raise his hand and ask for a break, because that gets him to escape the task, and a lot easier than this. And I probably can actually start teaching him some math to get those skills if he's in a place where he's not tantruming. And so right now, we kind of teach this as a short-term objective, right? We're willing to take this, but our long-term is definitely we're going to get him those math skills. And we don't forget about that, okay? But we need to come up with a good plan to replace that behavior and, of course, reinforce both the replacement behavior and the desired behavior. So, of course, what we're asking the student to do, the setting event makes the problem a little bit worse. This is what the student wants right now, of escaping the task. See how different, of course, getting another problem versus escaping the task. I'll take escape the task, right? So I'm going to continue with this. Okay, we're going to need to give him some math skills, but that might take us a while, maybe a few months, right? So in the meantime, we're going to give him this alternate or replacement behavior. Make sense? Okay. So the function is then going to guide the way that we select those replacement behaviors. What are replacement behaviors? They're an immediate attempt to reduce disruption and potentially dangerous behavior in the classroom, to take some pressure off the teacher. They're designed to actively begin breaking the student's habit of that problem behavior by replacing them with more acceptable alternative behaviors. So I want you to remember these characteristics, because when you're coming up with your behavior support plans, you're going to check to see if your team strategies match this. And of course, we'll do the examples for Morgan and Jordan. But a replacement behavior is an appropriate replacement behavior that serves the same function. So it needs to get them out of the task if that's what the FBA says, okay? Is easier to do and more efficient than the problem behavior. So requires less effort and provide quicker, more reliable access to that reinforcer, which is of course the function, either gaining or avoiding, whatever it is, and is socially acceptable. So those are the three things to remember. You guys got them down? Think you know them? Okay? Same function, easier to do, more efficient, and is socially acceptable. So let's see if we can apply those for Leslie. Leslie's 12. She has severe intellectual disabilities, does not use words, and hits her head. Head hitting is maintained by adult attention. That's what the FBA tells us, okay, during work periods. So, of course, the function is going to guide us in this process. So I want you to help me choose the best replacement behavior, okay? So hide under the desk and be ignored. Should I teach her how to do that? No, why not? Because the function is adult attention, and hiding under the desk immediately doesn't get you that right now, right? Okay? So we're going to cross that one out. Sign for more to another student. It's a good idea, but it's not getting her access to adult attention, right? Okay? So take completed work up to show the teacher. That's getting her attention, right? Now, of course, I had other rules besides the function that apply. Remember what those other rules were? Matches the function, efficient, and then, of course, socially acceptable, right? So right now, we'll keep that one there. Might be a little hard for her to do, right? Move to sit by another student. Is that one we're going to choose? No, doesn't get adult attention. Use a picture communication system to request teacher help. Remember, we want it to be as easy or easier than that problem behavior. And so which one's easier? Do I have to complete my work and then show it to the teacher, or using my picture communication to say I need help? I need help, right? The picture communication system, right? So remember which is easier to do. And of course, now we're going to say the completed work is too hard right now. Again, that's our goal. We want her to get there, but we definitely don't want her hitting her head anymore. So we're going to use the picture communication system, teach her how to use that. Is that socially acceptable is our last question. Yeah, it's a lot more socially acceptable than, of course, hitting your head. So we will teach her to use those things. Let's do another one. Jason, he's 9 and cries when asked to do difficult tasks. The crying is maintained by avoiding or escaping difficult tasks. Okay? Remember, we start looking at the function. Possible replacements are more rewards for doing tasks. Same function. Well, he's trying to avoid, right? So when he gets more rewards for doing the tasks, no, not if he maybe doesn't have to do them tomorrow or something maybe, right? But that's not immediate enough, right? Asking for an easier task or worksheet. Does that match the function? Avoiding or escaping? Yeah, that's a keeper. We'll hold on to that one. We've got to apply our other rules too. Asking to play with his Game Boy. Does that work? Well, he kind of gets out of the task if he does Game Boy, right? Well, actually, we'll keep that one on there because we have two other rules, right? We have the function, right? And then we have the 2 other rules. But we're going to talk about the function first. Requesting adult attention, well, we know that one's wrong because he wants to avoid, so we've got to teach him how to avoid. Asking to have a soda after tasks are done. Everybody would like a soda, but really that's what's most important to him is escaping, so we're going to get rid of that. Now we have to talk about these 2, right? And the other rules are easier, more efficient, right? And of course, socially acceptable, which is probably going to be the bigger key right here. So which one's easier to do than the problem behavior? Both of these are pretty easy. I can ask for an easier task, or I can ask for Game Boy, please, right? But then the last question is, which is more socially acceptable in my 4th grade classroom, right? Asking for an easier worksheet. So Game Boy was a great idea, but asking for a worksheet is a little bit better, more socially acceptable. Make sense? See how we applied those 3 rules right there? Okay? Good. So the idea here is we want to make sure that that crying behavior that Jason was doing is not resulting in getting him to escape, but because we're going to teach him a better way. Now you just ask for it and you get it. You don't even have to cry. Just ask and you get a break. Okay? So, of course, we know that this is not specific enough, but we're doing an example here. Okay? So what I want you guys to do is just the replacement behavior. So just the top box where it says to check 1. You have 1 option here for Morgan. Or not 1 option. There's 5 options, but just this 1 box. And so I want you to choose the best one using those rules that we talked about. Okay, so look at her summary statement. What is the best replacement behavior for her? Go ahead and do that next 25 to 30 seconds. It's on page 73. not a test yet, so if you really want to talk to your peer, but do it in 15 seconds. Okay. So let's do this together, okay? And we have another example too. So remember, this is her hypothesis. We think the task is too difficult. Okay, so we think she's trying to escape the difficult task. So remember the first rule, it needs to match the function. So it needs to get her out of that task. So the student earns desired computer time for each sentence written. Sorry, these are the rules to remind you guys of how we do this. So earns desired computer time for each sentence written. What do you guys think? Somebody said yes. Did it match the function? No, it needs to get her out of the activity. So we're going to not keep that one. Asked to write on large lined paper. Doesn't quite get her out of the task. It modified the task, but didn't get her out of it. Okay. Do writing and have a peer check her spelling. No, good idea, but doesn't get the function. Asked to take a break from writing. Does that match the function? Good. Complete the task and then take a 2-minute break. Again, great ideas, but has to be easier, right? She might revert back to throwing stuff on the ground if she has to do her work, right? So we're going to say, first of all,